Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Drake Effect. I'm your host, Brad Drake, and on today's episode, we are going to talk about the Honky Tonk Man's reign as WWF Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion. We celebrate Honky Tonk Man especially on this show because this weekend, Honky Tonk Man will be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Honky Tonk Man started his pro wrestling career in 1977 in Missouri, where he was trained by the legendary Herb Welch. He wasn't alone. Training alongside and working with Honky was none other than the future Hall of Famer himself, Koko B. Ware. Honky was 24 years old at this time, a college graduate, and also held a full-time job as a school PE teacher. Honky would travel from Tennessee to Missouri on weekends to train and to work local shows. His first year in the sport gave him opportunities to work with members of the extended Welch family, and even with the legendary late-great Lou Thesz. Honky credits his fast rise in the sport to the fact that not only was he working shows with great talent, but he continued to train with Welch and others every chance he got in order to improve. After about a year, Honky had so much confidence in his skills that he quit his job as a PE teacher and decided to give wrestling a full shot full-time. From Missouri, Honky and some others moved on to Memphis. Honky's cousin, Jerry Lawler, had a stake in the territory, and Honky thought this might help him with a big break. Honky says in several interviews that Lawler didn't have much patience with new wrestlers at that time, however, and that his first stint in Memphis was not very memorable. From Memphis, Honky traveled around seeking work in other territories. While in Florida Championship Wrestling, Booker Jerry Briscoe paired Honky with Larry Latham, the future Moondog Spot, to form the tag team the Blonde Bombers. The Bombers went back to the Memphis territory, where they were managed by Sergeant Danny Davis, and they were an instant hit. They became involved in bloodbath feuds and brawls with the likes of Lawler and Bill Dundee. They also engaged in matches and feuds with many other tag teams in the territory. One of the most memorable matches the Blonde Bombers had was when they engaged in a wild, drawn-out brawl with Lawler and Dundee in what is now known as the legendary Tupelo Concession Stand Brawl. This match was hardcore before hardcore was mainstream. Post-Memphis, Honky had runs in the AWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, the WWC in Puerto Rico, the Fuller's Southeastern Championship Wrestling, Southwest Championship Wrestling, and various other NWA territories. Eventually, Honky made his way to Canada, where he worked for Stampede Wrestling under the name Honky Tonk Man. This wasn't his choice, but Bruce Hart had put this as his name on the posters shortly before his arrival. Honky speaks highly of his time in Stampede, where he was able to really hone his craft and get television exposure in Alberta and parts of Saskatchewan. For those of you that may be unfamiliar with Stampede Wrestling in the 1970s and 1980s, the territory in that time period is known as a breeding ground for some of the all-time greats of professional wrestling. Stampede Wrestling had a style all to its own and had incredible, high-quality matches. The Hart family brought in wrestlers from England and other parts of Europe. These wrestlers brought with them the world of sports style of high-paced, gymnastic-style ring action. The Harts also brought in great technical wrestlers from Japan and monstrous brawlers from the United States and Canada. Luchadors also came in from Mexico, bringing with them high-flying moves and lightning-fast chain wrestling. This caused a melting pot of styles, and some incredible wrestlers formed in the territory versed in all these different styles. Some of the most notable Stampede alumni include Superstar Billy Graham, Dr. D. David Schultz, The Dynamite Kid, Davey Boy Smith, Bret Hitman Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Bad News Allen, later known as Bad News Brown, The Junkyard Dog, and eventually Owen Hart. Many Japanese junior heavyweight wrestlers also had stints in Stampede, such as the original Tiger Mask, the Cobra, and Jushin Thunder Liger. I encourage each of you to do some research into Stampede Wrestling and watch the videos that are uploaded onto YouTube. It truly was a special time in wrestling, and the unique style produced some wonderful matchups. Eventually, Stampede Wrestling was bought out by Vince McMahon. Soon after, the British Bulldogs, the Hart Foundation, and others found their way to the WWF. I would argue that the British Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation are among the greatest tag teams in WWF and professional wrestling history. Ironically, Jim Neidhart and Bret Hart will also be inducted alongside the Honky Tonk Man this weekend in the class of 2019 Hall of Fame. Honky Tonk Man not only got television exposure from working for the Hart family, but he also worked for Al Tomko of All-Star Wrestling, and that television was featured on BCTV. BCTV had national Canadian exposure, and the Honky Tonk Man, not Honky Tonk Wayne, became a heated and hated name among wrestling fans all throughout Canada. Honky had been wrestling for some time up north by the time 1986 rolled around. In an interview from 2012 by Hannibal of Great North Wrestling, Honky Tonk Man describes running into his old friend Hulk Hogan backstage on a WWF card in Calgary. Stu Hart had gotten Honky and a couple others matches on the big WWF show. Honky had the opportunity to rub elbows with some old friends from the various territories he worked, including Hogan. Hogan and Honky were friends from early in Hogan's career, when Honky helped out a young Hogan and a young Brutus Beefcake, then known as the Boulder Brothers, to learn their craft. This is where Hogan asked Honky to join the WWF. Honky told Hogan that he didn't think he was good enough, but Hogan assured him that he had all the tools he needed to make it in the WWF. Honky left Hogan that evening, and Hogan told him that he would have Vince McMahon reach out to him soon. Honky says that Hogan was true to his word, and the next day Vince McMahon contacted him and offered him a job. Honky told McMahon that he would definitely like to work for him, but that he didn't want to leave Stu Hart hanging without notice. McMahon told Honky that he would take care of things with Stu. When Honky had his initial meetings with McMahon, Vince told him that he could see Honky as a big-time babyface for the company. He had visions of kids wearing Elvis jumpsuits and kids wearing Elvis wigs. Honky stated that he had his reservations about working as a babyface since he had been a heel for a solid 7 years. He was impressed in the merchandising opportunities and McMahon's enthusiasm, however, so he went right along with it. Honky officially joined the WWF in September 1986. He says that his babyface run didn't work out right from the beginning because they started him out on TV in Ontario. As said before, Honky had been a mega heel on BCTV, and he had been seen as a master nasty heel all throughout Canada. The fans just weren't buying the smiling, fan-friendly Honky Tonk Man this time around, and they booed him viciously and loudly. For his first 6 weeks or so in the WWF, Honky worked television shows and mostly squash matches. Later on, he was added to the house show circuit where he worked undercard wrestlers such as Lanny Poffo and S.D. Jones. During this period, the fans still hadn't warmed up to him, American audiences included now. It was at this point that the WWF started seriously talking about Honky Tonk Man turning heel. Jesse Ventura had a great idea, and the WWF ran with it. Ventura hosted a vote of confidence on Honky Tonk Man, where fans were to call in and vote whether they loved or hated him. The votes came in negatively, and Honky's heel turn was started after this searing interview.
Honky Tonk Man really bent out of shape about the voting that went down here in the World Wrestling Federation and the present situation that he's in. Let's go to the Honky Tonk Man.
The Honky Tonk Man went to Jack Tunney. I went to the big fat man's office, and I counted all the votes because I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that the Honky Tonk Man would be let down. I couldn't believe after I pleaded and I kissed babies with puke on their mouth. I shook greasy, nasty hands. I did all those things to get the vote of confidence, and I didn't get it. And I sat down, I counted every vote, and I came up on the short end. It's true, I came up on the short end because you didn't appreciate me. But I'm going to tell you this right now. The Honky Tonk Man can do some jaw-jacking and back-cracking, and I promise you right now that there's going to be a big, big surprise for you all. I'm not going to take any more of it. I'm not going to have any more kissing babies. I'm not going to shake any more hands. I'm going to walk by and slap some babies maybe. I'm going to walk by and hit some I'm going to throw some men up in the ring maybe and do a tap dance on their head because I can be just as mean and nasty as anybody else around here. That's what you want from the Honky Tonk Man. That's what you're going to get because you deserve it now. You deserve it all.
Honky's first big feud after his heel turn was with Jake the Snake Roberts. Roberts, who was a heel at the time, rocketed into babyface status after Honky Tonk Man smashed a guitar over his head live on television. This feud led to their big blow-off match at WrestleMania 3, where Honky defeated Jake Roberts with a quick roll-up after Jimmy Hart had distracted Roberts. They continued to work the house show loop together after this and helped draw record WWF live event crowds. Just a couple months after the big victory at WrestleMania 3, on June 2, 1987, Honky Tonk Man won the Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship from Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Steamboat's reign was cut short by Vince McMahon after he requested time off. This match would air on the June 13, 1987 episode of Superstars. Honky in several interviews says that he happened to be walking down the hallway where McMahon and Hogan were having a conversation. They were talking about the situation with Steamboat requesting time off, and Vince McMahon had already made the decision to take the title off him. The only question remaining now was who should take the title off of him. Honky says as he was walking by them, Hogan said to Vince, "Hey, how about him?" Honky says that was when Vince McMahon rubbed his chin and said, "Maybe so." Later that day, McMahon asked to speak with Honky alone, and he went over what he was looking for in the next Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion. Honky said that he would do whatever it took to be champion. Later that night, Honky won the Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship from Steamboat in Buffalo, New York.
Give you a word about next week's card, but right now coming back into the ring, I can't believe it, the new Intercontinental Champion, the Honky Tonk Man.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You're a beautiful audience. Thank you. I knew I could do it with your support. I knew you'd be behind me 100%. And I did this just for you. This is your belt. It's not mine. It belongs to you people. Thank you very much. Now I know what you want. You want to see the Honky Tonk Man dance. So turn the music on and let me give it to you. Woo! I can't.
Honky Tonk Man was originally booked just to be a transitional champion between Steamboat and Jake Roberts. Roberts then went on to fail several drug tests, and the title remained with Honky. During his early reign, Honky Tonk Man engaged in feuds with some notable wrestling names on the circuit. His nightly opponents included the legendary Bruno Sammartino, Billy Jack Haynes, Ricky Steamboat, and George the Animal Steele. Most of these matches ended in countouts or disqualifications, usually with Honky Tonk Man on the losing end. When it came to television, however, Honky continued a red-hot winning streak over enhancement talent. In many interviews, the Honky Tonk Man talks about how heavy the schedule was back in the 1980s WWF, how many matches he worked per week, and the high demand that a champion in the WWF had to endure. To verify this, I looked up just the first 2 months of Honky Tonk Man's reign as Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion. I'll read off his matches and their locations for June and July of 1987. On June 3rd, in Rochester, New York, at a house show, Honky Tonk Man defeated Paul Roma by pinfall. On June 4th, in Omaha, Nebraska, Koko B. Ware defeated Honky Tonk Man by pinfall. Honky was not yet recognized as the Intercontinental Champion because the change hadn't happened on television yet. On June 5th in Rosemont, Illinois, Hulk Hogan defeated Honky Tonk Man by pinfall. Again, Honky was not recognized as the Intercontinental Champion because the change hadn't happened on television yet. On June 6th in Boston, Massachusetts, Honky Tonk Man defeated Koko B. Ware by pinfall. Again, Honky was not recognized as the Intercontinental Champion because the footage had not aired yet. On June 12th in West Palm Beach, Florida, Randy Savage pinned Honky Tonk Man. Honky was not yet recognized as the Intercontinental Champion. On June 13th, in St. Louis, Missouri, Hillbilly Jim defeated Honky Tonk Man by pinfall. Again, Honky was not recognized as the Intercontinental Champion. On June 14th, in Tucson, Arizona, Bruno Sammartino defeats Honky Tonk Man by pinfall in a non-title match. On June 15th, in Phoenix, Bruno Sammartino defeats Honky Tonk Man again, this time by countout. On June 16th, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Bruno Sammartino, the living legend, defeats Honky Tonk Man for a third consecutive night by countout. On June 18th in Birmingham, Alabama, Bruno Sammartino defeats Honky Tonk Man by countout for a fourth night in a row. On June 19th in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Jake Roberts pins Honky Tonk Man in a non-title match. On June 21st in South Bend, Indiana, Honky Tonk Man beats Jake Roberts by disqualification. On June 22nd in Erie, Pennsylvania, Honky Tonk Man beats Jake Roberts by disqualification. On June 23rd in Indianapolis, Indiana, the Honky Tonk Man beats Omar Atlas by pinfall. On June 24th in Louisville, Kentucky for primetime wrestling, the Honky Tonk Man beats George Steele by countout. In a second primetime wrestling match recording that evening, Honky Tonk Man defeats Jim Powers by pinfall. Also on this night, in the house show portion of the event, Honky Tonk Man beats Scott Casey by pinfall. On June 27th in Dayton, Ohio, Honky Tonk Man defeated Jake Roberts by disqualification. And on June 29th in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, Honky Tonk Man defeated Jake Roberts by, you guessed it, disqualification. For June 1987, Honky Tonk Man's overall record was 11 wins and 9 losses. He had a total of 20 matches that month.
All right, we are going to be back in Midtown Manhattan, Madison Square Garden, Saturday night, July the 25th. What a phenomenal card. And remember now, this is a Saturday night, all family night. Brutus, the Barber Beefcake, will be going against Greg the Hammer Valentine. The San Francisco Clipper, that's what I call Beefcake, is going to be back. Good gravy. That'll drive you nuts after a while. Can-Am Connection to meet the Islanders. Tito Santana squares off against Nikolai Volkov. Jimmy Hart, your little squirrel, come on in. Welcome back.
You are jealous of the Honky Tonk Man singing. You're jealous of his playing. You're jealous because I'm the manager of the Hart Foundation, the World Champions, and the manager of the Intercontinental Champion. And here he is.
By the way, the Harts have a title defense on that night, the 25th of July, against the Bulldogs. And you, Honky Tonk Man, you've got to face the music. Jake the Snake Roberts.
Let's see, the Honky Tonk Man's gonna play the music. And I'm gonna play it for Gotham. You're always talking about Gotham. That's the home of Batman and Robin. Right or wrong?
That's
the Honky Tonk Man's second home. When I walk Manhattan and I'm looking for a fight, you know I have not. After all this time, when I walk the streets of New York City, the Honky Tonk Man said, I'm looking for a fight. I hadn't been able to find one. I don't think there's anybody tough around there. I don't think there's anybody bad.
Jake the Snake Roberts, I think you're going to have your hands full.
I proved a long time ago that Jake the Snake Roberts wasn't so tough. I played the #1 hit tune for Jake the Snake Roberts. He hadn't been the same since then. And I don't think he'll be the same Saturday night. See, Saturday night, July the 25th at Madison Square Garden, that's a Honky Tonk Man's night out. That's when I like to get on the streets. That's when I like to shake, rattle, and roll. And I think Jake the Snake Roberts is going to feel it for the one, the only, and the last time. I'm going to play my song for you, New York City. You my kind of people, I love you.
Saw you down in the village last week. Thank you very much. Honky Tonk Man to be in a garden on July the 25th.
In July of 1987, Honky Tonk Man engaged in another series of matches. On July 1st, in Newmarket, Ontario, Bruno Sammartino defeated Honky Tonk Man by pinfall in a non-title match. On July 9th, in Hartford, Connecticut, Honky Tonk Man defeats Randy Savage by disqualification. On July 10th, in Houston, Texas, Randy Savage and the Honky Tonk Man fought to a double disqualification. On July 11th, in Boston, Massachusetts, Bruno Sammartino defeats Honky Tonk Man by countout. On July 12th, in Portland, Maine, Tito Santana defeats Honky Tonk Man by disqualification. On July 13th, in Manchester, New Hampshire, the Junkyard Dog defeats Honky Tonk Man by disqualification. On July 14th, in Lowell, Massachusetts, Tito Santana defeats Honky Tonk Man by, you guessed it, disqualification. On July 15th, in Glen Falls, New York, the Honky Tonk Man beats Joe Malono by pinfall for an All-American Wrestling taping. On a house show match the same night, Jake Roberts defeats Honky Tonk Man by pinfall in a non-title match. On July 16th in Lake Placid, New York, Honky Tonk Man defeats Coco Beware by countout on the Wrestling Challenge taping. Later on that evening in a house show match, Honky Tonk Man pinned David Studemeyer. On July 17th in Richfield, Ohio, Honky Tonk Man defeated Brutus the Barber Beefcake. On July 18th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the living legend Bruno Sammartino once again defeats the Honky Tonk Man by countout. On July 23rd in Peterborough, Ontario, Honky Tonk Man defeats the Junkyard Dog. On July 25th, on the Primetime Wrestling taping from New York, Jake the Snake Roberts defeated Honky Tonk Man by disqualification. Later on that evening, in a separate Primetime Wrestling taping, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat defeated Honky Tonk Man by disqualification. On July 26th, all the way out in Los Angeles, California, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat defeated Honky Tonk Man by disqualification. On July 27th in Phoenix, Arizona, Macho Man Randy Savage defeated the Honky Tonk Man by disqualification. On July 28th in Tucson, Arizona, Honky Tonk Man defeated Randy Savage by disqualification. On July 29th in Sacramento, California, the Macho Man Randy Savage defeated Honky Tonk Man by disqualification. On July 30th in Tacoma, Washington, Honky Tonk Man defeated Randy Savage by disqualification. Also that night in Las Vegas, Nevada, the Honky Tonk Man defeated the Macho Man by disqualification. For July 1987, Honky Tonk Man's record was 9 wins, 12 losses, and 1 draw. And if you paid attention during either of those segments, at the travel period, there was times when he went from Texas all the way to the East Coast in an evening, or New York, all the way to Los Angeles the following evening. I think by taking a look at this and reading this, we'd have to agree with Honky Tonk Man's assessment that the travel schedule for the WWF in the 1980s was absolute hell.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to my guest, manager, Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, and the reigning Intercontinental Champion, the Honky Tonk Man. Now, gentlemen, as I understand it, the reason we have you here is so that you can deliver on a promise, Honky Tonk Man. Last week you said, and you would give us 10 reasons. 10 good reasons, man. All right, 10 good reasons Why, you are the greatest Intercontinental champ and much better than Randy Macho Man Savage ever was. Are you here to deliver?
Reason number one, not that it really matters, but I've become a big singing star now. I'm even a better singer than Elvis Presley was. I've got the #1 hit song on a new wrestling album, Pile Driver, called Honky Tonk Man, and it's done by me. Reason number two, I have the best manager in the whole wide world. I've got a man for a manager. I've got the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, the greatest manager of all time. And reason number three, not that.
I want to tell you something right now. You're looking at the greatest Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion of all time, yeah. And listen, Big Mouth, people with big mouths get themselves in big trouble. You want to wake up with a macho man just hangover? You keep doing the thing, and you'll find out why, yeah.
Well, I've just been waiting on the day that I can wrestle you, Macho Man, because I don't think you're the greatest of all time.
Unbelievable. I don't even think you said what you said. But that's the thing right there. A challenge to the Macho Man, Randy Savage. A lot of people right here, Honky Tonk Man. So why don't we do the thing? And why don't we do the thing? Why don't we do the thing right now in that ring?
I think he's on his way to reach. He's out in the people. He's going right through the people. Savage is he hot or what? Look at this. He wants the Honky Tonk Man. He wants the Honky Tonk Man right now.
Well, this is totally ridiculous. There's no match that's been signed. There's no money that's been talked about.
What's the story? He issued a challenge.
What? I'd love to get in the ring with him right now, but I'm not dressed for it. I'm not dressed for this right now.
Well, the challenge is issued. We will see what will happen.
Honky Tonk Man not dressed for the match. We'll be back as we continue with more.
In September 1987, Macho Man Randy Savage had freshly turned babyface to the delight of the WWF fans. He immediately challenged the reigning Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion, the Honky Tonk Man, to a match at Saturday night's main event on October 3rd, 1987. This proposed match came with a lot of controversy, however, most of which we didn't learn about until decades later. Shortly before the match, Honky Tonk Man was approached about dropping the Intercontinental title to Savage on Saturday night's main event. According to Honky, this was Dick Ebersol's idea to create a buzz on the show for NBC ratings. In case you don't know who Dick Ebersol was, he was the producer for NBC who worked with Vince McMahon on the WWF on NBC. Honky questioned McMahon's decision to have him drop the title and asked McMahon if there was a problem and if he hadn't lived up to his word about being a great champion for him. McMahon ignored this and told Honky that after dropping the title, he would be pulled from television and rebuilt. Honky interpreted being rebuilt as being run out of the WWF. This concern of potential unemployment caused Honky to hold firm against dropping the title. This even led him to seek employment with the NWA. So he called Jim Barnett, who was working for Crockett Promotions at the time. According to Honky, Barnett assured him that Crockett would have a spot for him if he decided to leave the WWF. Unknown to Honky at the time, Barnett then called one of his contacts in the WWF and told him that Honky was looking to come to Crockett. Making that phone call to Barnett was a major career gamble for Honky, and it could have led to him being stripped of the title and immediately fired from the WWF. When questioned by McMahon about his call to Barnett, Honky held firm in saying that he wouldn't drop the title on television, and that if McMahon was just going to write him off after the show, he would rather leave on his own terms. Honky claims that he told McMahon to his face that there were only two people he'd drop the title to. The first was Hulk Hogan, because Hulk had gotten him into the WWF, and the second was McMahon himself, if he could put on a pair of tights and beat him legitimately for the belt. Eventually, cooler heads prevailed, and Honky Tonk Man ended up holding onto the championship via disqualification on the show. Honky's hard stance led him to holding onto the championship for another 10 months, and he earned the respect of other wrestlers in the locker room, including Randy Savage. Honky claims that Savage told him that he'd have done the same thing if he had been in Honky's position.
You've been saying I had a big mouth. Well, you're right. But you're not going to shut it for me, because I'm going to sing, I'm going to dance, and after this weekend when I shake, rattle, and roll you, I'm going to prove to everybody, and you in particular, Macho Man, I'm the greatest Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion of all time.
The Honky Tonk Man and Randy Savage feud continued again at the first Survivor Series held on November 26, 1987. Randy Savage captained his team of Brutus Beefcake, Jake Roberts, Ricky Steamboat, and Jim Duggan against Honky Tonk's team of Harley Race, Hercules, the Outlaw Ron Bass, and Danny Davis. Not the Danny Davis previously mentioned as Honky Tonk's manager. The match went 24 minutes and saw Honky Tonk Man be eliminated last, as Savage, Roberts, and Steamboat were the survivors. The Survivor Series match wasn't the end of the feud with Savage, though, and the two would continue to work the circuit and sporadically have matches on television all the way into 1988. The last high-profile match between Savage and Honky Tonk Man was on February 5, 1988 on NBC's Main Event. Savage defeated Honky Tonk Man by countout after ramming Honky into the ring post. Honky Tonk Man's next big profile feud was with the red-hot Brutus the Barber Beefcake. These two were no strangers. Honky had helped the young Brutus Beefcake years before when he was known as Eddie Boulder, and he was the tag team partner of a young Hulk Hogan. Honky and Beefcake worked the house show circuit together and went at it on WWF television. Their feud led to them having a match at WrestleMania 4. Jimmy Hart ended up getting his hair cut by Beefcake after Beefcake defeated Honky Tonk Man by disqualification. This feud raged on through the spring and summer of 1988. It was set to culminate with a title match at SummerSlam 88, but it never happened.
Hey, Jess and Gorilla, I'm downstairs here, and guess who I saw just a moment ago? Yep, she's down here, Vanna White, and she's waiting. As soon as I get finished with this little interview here, me and Vanna's going to take a little walk around the convention center here. Hey, Jess, sorry, buddy boy. You guys fooled me last year. This year I got new contacts. I know who I'm looking for this year. You didn't get me too good last year with Moolah. Not at all. Burned me up a pair of shoes with...
Come on, Honky, big deal, Vanna White, right, baby?
Looking for Vanna White. I don't think you're looking for Vanna White at all. I think you're looking for something else down here. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you guys are talking about. I'll tell you what you guys are looking for and what you're going to find very shortly. Brutus the Barber Man, the guy who takes care of me. Do I look good or not? And you better look out, buddy boy. You're going to be losing some locks a little while. In about, I would say another 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, you want to try to be funny? Yeah. Why don't we talk about somebody's lifetime batting average or something, trying to make jokes out here? This is serious business to us. We're talking about the Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship. We're talking about cutting somebody's hair. You're going to get it, Brutus. Shake, rattle, and roll. I don't care if I have to backstroke up the Mississippi. Woo!
You guys ain't never coming to my house.
In an odd turn of events, Beefcake was mauled by Outlaw Ron Bass with a boot spur on television just 1 week before SummerSlam 88 was to take place. Bass was suspended for his actions by President Jack Tunney, and Beefcake was injured so severely that he was laid up from active competition. This left Honky Tonk Man without an opponent for the big pay-per-view event. When it came time for the match, Honky challenged anyone in the back. After silence for several seconds, the music of the Ultimate Warrior hit the airwaves, and the Warrior came sprinting towards the ring. In just 31 seconds, Honky Tonk Man's 64-week title reign was over.
Well, it goes without saying. He's got the Colonel, the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. I, for one, am certainly anxious to find out who, in fact, is the #1 challenger. Now that Brutus the Barber Beefcake has been shelved temporarily.
No question about it, but it doesn't look like the Honky Tonk.
Nobody sent any word up to us.
Nothing to us, brother. The Honky Tonk Man doesn't care.
His opponent.
He don't even want to know.
Here it comes. Who is his opponent? Come on, Howard. Howard doesn't even know.
Howard Finkel, the announcer, doesn't know. Come on, brother. Let's get it together.
Shook his head.
Get me somebody out here to wrestle. I don't care who it is.
Don't say that, brother. Don't say that, my man. There's some people back there in the locker rooms who would take this man apart.
We're all waiting here with anticipation as to who the opponent will be. Well, maybe we haven't got an opponent.
Well, maybe we have an opponent, but, you know, maybe he's still lacing up his boots. Who knows, man?
Wait a minute. Somebody's music.
That's familiar music, brother.
They've exploded here in the garden. I don't see anybody yet.
Here is the
officially underway.
Warrior doesn't know what to do. He's so excited.
The title definitely up for grabs here.
Oh, we could get a new champion right now, Gorilla Monsoon. Right now, brother, we could get a new champion. I'm here to tell you.
Splash hooks the leg.
That's it.
History has been made here.
Goodness. I love it. I love it.
Look at this place go bananas.
Pandemonium is run wild in Madison Square Garden, my man.
History once again made here in Madison Square Garden.
The winner of this contest and new Intercontinental Champion, the Ultimate Warrior.
It had to be record time, Gorilla Monsoon. It had to be record time, brother.
It is unbelievable. The garden has gone strictly bananas.
As a kid growing up in the 1980s, I specifically remember Honky Tonk Man because I absolutely hated him. I hated his look, I hated his hair, I hated the way he talked, and I hated his manager. Every time he came out on television, I would yell at the TV, and I was excited at the chance to see somebody beat him up. There wasn't much that brought me more joy in pro wrestling than seeing Honky Tonk Man being thrown around the ring by Jake Roberts, Ricky Steamboat, Randy Savage, or Brutus Beefcake. Years later, I realized how good Honky Tonk Man was at what he did, and how well he was able to get a negative reaction out of the crowd. He was excellent. I vividly recall watching WWF television when Outlaw Ron Bass attacked Brutus Beefcake in the middle of the ring. I was horrified that Beefcake was beaten and cut so badly that he now wouldn't get his title shot. My brother and I were in shock, wondering who would now get the title shot, or if they would drop the title match altogether from SummerSlam '88. I was watching live on August 29, 1988, when the Ultimate Warrior answered Honky Tonk's open challenge at SummerSlam. My brother and I were jumping around our family room as the Warrior smashed Honky Tonk Man and liberated the championship from the man we hated. I can remember clear as day as the recap of the match was showing. Superstar Billy Graham called the Warrior's big slash a body slam. Gorilla Monsoon quickly covered, yelling out, "What a splash!" The fact is that Graham was so excited and worked up that it made the whole moment real. The wrestler that everyone hated finally got his just due, and Graham got caught up in the thrill of it all, just as all of us fans did. When I look back on Honky Tonk Man's title reign, I completely agree that he is the greatest Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion of all time. He held it the longest, and he held it with the most distinction. There wasn't a champion before or after that gave the title as much prestige as Honky. I think the reason this is because the Honky Tonk Man always mentioned that he was the champion, he took pride in being the champion, he wore the belt around his waist and had it shined up, and he gloated and bragged about it every time that a microphone was in front of him. As a fan, you believed he was the greatest champion because he believed he was the greatest champion. When was the last time you saw any champion in wrestling treat his or her belt with half as much importance as Honky treated his? Here's another great aspect of Honky's title reign. Back in the 1980s, the WWF only had two single championships and one tag team championship. If someone held a title, it really meant something. As a kid growing up watching wrestling, title changes did not just happen often, and those wrestlers that were champions were held in high regard. To show how much that has changed, this weekend's WrestleMania will feature a card with more championship matches than non-championship matches. In the golden era of pro wrestling, Honky was front and center and one of the best at what he did. His natural chemistry with Jimmy Hart brought great things to a whole other level of hatred. Honky Tonk Man brought us incredibly entertaining matches and got our blood pressure up from hating him so much. His Hall of Fame induction is well deserved and long overdue. Congratulations, Honky Tonk Man. You deserve it. Thank you for listening to this edition of The Drake Effect, and please continue to join us here on YouTube as we continue to discuss wrestling and popular culture. So long for now. I'd like it noted that none of the audio presentations were used with permission from WWE. These presentations were used strictly in a historical matter